The whole world has a problem with housing.
Yeah, and also like building the houses, you have to also consider weather and all that, all those other factors. So if it's rainy, you can't really build on there. So with building inside the factory, you kind of have a little bit more control over things, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point. The weather is just stops jobs. You know,
It
in
really
New
does.
Hampshire, you're going to be getting cold, and worse, it's going to be getting wet. New England, it's going to be get very, very wet. All that lumber is going to bend in the south and the west. You know, here in Las Vegas, we live in the desert, and we get,
Hmm.
118 and 120-degree days. It is slow. It is inefficient. It is dangerous. People dehydrate. It's not anything we would ever want to be a part of. A factory-controlled environment also allows us to have more women, more girls in the labor force. You know, they're not as strong as men, but they are fantastic. I believe that they're more detail oriented, and
Hmm.
as technicians in a safe, cool, climate controlled environment, they are better in a lot of tasks, and it allows us to mix our workforce much, much better and make them happier too, frankly.
Yeah, no, that's really cool that you thought about just including all of the just workforce. Yeah, I was just scrolling through your guys' social media pages, and that you guys are hiring a lot of people right now because it's a growing company. So, and
Yeah,
at the
absolutely. We are a startup. We have our office staff, the sort of the nerve center will have about 50 people. And the factory behind me per shift will have about 105 people. We think we'll run two shifts, maybe three shifts. So factory one will employ about 300, between 250 and 350 people. And then, so let's call it on the lower number and be conservative. And you have an economic multiplier effect of 5 to 7. This factory is helping put food on the table and improve the
Mhm.
standard of living. About 1,000 people, 1,200 people in the local community, and it's very important to us that, that to help our local community. And this factory is in Las Vegas, so we look to help the Las Vegas uh, community and the folks that are here.
Yeah, no, it's really cool that you have the community in mind as well. So, yeah, um, management philosophy. Do you want to touch on that about dealing in?
Yes, absolutely. So
Hmm.
we are, in our hearts and at our core, a design company. So we have a few sayings here philosophically, in terms of the culture of the company that we're growing. You know, I've come out of an intellectual property design and engineering company. So you have to get very honest with yourself and with others. You have to be able to say you're right when somebody comes up with a better idea, or the company and the individual can't flourish to get to the end result. So we have a couple of sayings that really need more explanation. It's too long for this interview, but two main things are couple of the things are folks here are allowed to make mistakes. If we don't allow people to make mistakes, there's a culture that you get really punished for mistakes. Everybody clams up, and you can't do that in an innovative engineering and design company. So as long as it doesn't kill us, we encourage everybody to experiment and make mistakes. The flip side of that is nobody is allowed to forget anything. And it's not a difficult task. People just need to keep lists and keep abreast of the list. What happens when a staffer doesn't remember something? It means that somebody else gets to know that that's their pattern, and they have to remember it for them. And it just becomes a sinkhole where
Hmm.
one person is remembering something for something else. Everybody has to take responsibility, and not forgetting things and having the bravery to make mistakes are components in taking responsibility. And responsibility is the first step to leadership. And we encourage everybody to absorb those sort of tenets, if you like, come up with ideas and lead. Come up with ideas and lead. Very, very important. And then finally, I would say that we don't encourage anybody to say no. And by no, I mean saying no to new ideas. Yesterday's ideas, let me give you a very crazy example. If somebody said, you know what, it's 200 years ago, 150 years ago, and somebody says, well, I know, I'm going to make a replica of a bird in steel, and it's going to be massive, and the wings will not flap up and down, and I'm going to cut a hole in it, and I'm going to get in it, and I'm going to fly around. And everybody would have said, no, you can't do that. And there are many examples like that, but that's called an airplane, and we fly around all day. Or Steve Jobs famously in 2008 said, we don't need no stinking buttons, physical buttons on our mobile devices, if you remember the BlackBerry. And the BlackBerry CEO laughed and said, well, that's silly. Well, it proved that he was silly because Steve Jobs was right. And that simple ideas can have massive consequences. And that's probably one of my favorite examples. What is simpler than a tiny, tiny plastic button? There is almost nothing simpler than that. And Steve Jobs, ever the reductionist, removed that and created an entire industry. You could not have an iPhone, you could not have apps, you could not have any of it unless those buttons were gone. So we encourage our staff not to say no to new ideas. So somebody wants to build a metal bird or remove a plastic button. And it's really great. It's really great. And the final thing I would say is when we iterate with ideas, the best thing any person can say when they hear that the other guy's idea is better than their idea is, you're right. It's a huge relief. We move on, and you don't have to champion your own idea when you hear someone's idea is better. So those are some of the things that we have. Don't forget anything. Experiment, make mistakes, have ideas, be responsible. And those are the components to leadership. And we cannot build the size and scale, the multi-billion dollar scale that we're headed towards very, very fast now, without individual leaderships at every level. And it can be a guy on the factory floor pushing a broom. His fastest way to get away from pushing the broom is to do those things that I've mentioned. So a very, very different culture. I love the military. We are patriots. And in the military, it's the opposite of that. You do what you're told. Here, it's the opposite. We encourage people to not do what they're told, but to come up with a better idea or question it before doing what they're told.
Yeah, no, it's very startup. I like this. So yeah, now when I work with some other startups, it was very, very open like that, and it really allows for the company to like grow and innovate. So I think it's a really good philosophy. And then design philosophy. So obviously,
The
I mean,
design
it's foldable.
philosophy is very simple. Again, I use that word reductionist. It comes down to sort of the genetic code of whatever the problem is. The first principle. What is the first principle? It's when you can't reduce something any further, and you have to get away from the embellishment and get down to the first principle of a problem before you can build it. You can build it back up. We're also symmetrists. We're also designers. Overarchingly, it is extraordinarily difficult to make something simple. And I think when folks see production Boxables, they will look at it, and I think the biggest compliment they can say was like, wow, that's so simple. Why has nobody thought of that before? Well, it takes a lot of thinking to get something, as simple as we've managed to create here, but it's a tremendous amount of effort.
Yeah, it's just simplifying simple. So yeah.
Yeah.
So do you want to share any future goals for the company? Some sustainability goals, or just the
absolutely.
future?
Yeah. I mean, absolute top level stuff. I think that the very top level gets a little bit abstract. Boxabl is a building technology. The building technology are three sizes of building shells. And the easiest visual analogy is to think of Legos. So there are the three Lego sizes that we make is the little square one that everybody's familiar with, and then the rectangular one that everybody's familiar with the 8 sort of nodules on the front, and then the in-between size one that nobody uses. Those are the three types of Lego. So the little square one is the casita as a building shell. It is a square building shell in terms of the footprint. But the company as a technology will have three sizes of building shell, and you'll be able to mix, match, stack, we believe up to 5 stories, cantilever them to create decks on one side, porches on the other at a very low cost, and create really most things most of the time. So it's very, very exciting. That we see no ceiling in terms of sales volume. In fact, our biggest challenge after we go what we call from 0 to 1, from not having production to making production, we're going to be hit very hard upside the head with scale. This factory one behind me should be able to make a home every 90 minutes. And, obviously that's kind of mind-blowing for people to think that they get a home every 90 minutes, but it's really not good enough at all. This, we'd like to see it at least under an hour, maybe down to 10 or 15 minutes to build a home. The Ford F-150 production comes, a truck comes off the line every 58 seconds. That's absolutely mind-blowing. And it's significantly more complicated than what we're building. So we're not overreaching when we want to reduce the time cycle. And we have to reduce the time cycle because we need to make millions of product, and it's not that's not an exaggeration. So this company behind me can make about 3,000, 3,500 products a year. We're already planning Factory 2, and that goal for that is to make 250,000 or 300,000 products a year. And in terms of single homes, that would immediately make us probably 3 times larger than the largest home builder in the world. So I would liken the company right now as a startup. It is a controlled explosion. It's going more good than more bad. It's going pretty well at this point. And it's an exciting period for the company. There's lots going on every day. And after we do Factory 2, I think that probably in 2023, you should see us have factory partners outside of our borders, and that would allow us to scale 10x from wherever we are at that point domestically. And at some point there will be an IPO, which for your viewers is an initial public offering. I don't want to put a time frame on that, but the company needs to do that to get the required capital in the billions, multiple billions, to scale at the rate we want to scale at, and also to reward both our staff and our investors in terms of being able to monetize their investments at that time. And I think that will happen sooner than folks think. I hope so anyway. We like to, we also say under promise, over deliver here, so I won't say any more in terms of timing regarding that.
Very, very excited about the future for Boxabl. I definitely would love to see this in other countries like Philippines, a lot of Southeast Asia, Africa. So that'd be really, really cool.
Yeah, one of the really interesting things to me about foreign markets is I look at the McDonald's burgers as their franchise model, and that they are essentially factory partners. And I'm perhaps ashamed to say I've been in McDonald's all over the world. And I can tell you, for example, in it, there are local tastes, local flavors, if you pardon the pun, and there are local rules and there are local laws, and we cannot expect to be expert in all of those. But in Italy, for example, they have an espresso machine center. You can have your caffè stretto, and you would never have any of those things here with us in the USA or Thailand or China and Korea. The burgers taste different. So if our Boxabl is a burger, then we have to be very sensitive to the fact that local countries have those local preferences. So I do believe factory partners around the world will be fantastic to serve local markets. And we have no shortage of folks, major corporations inquiring to Boxabl for that. And as you said, the Philippines, third world, first world makes no difference. We are in a world housing crisis.